Okay, start off by giving us your name and title.
My name is Matt Burgess. I'm the CEO of Home Sweet Home Ministries.
Okay, and we were just outside. What's going on today?
Today, the cleanup of the encampment that's been next door to us for the last year is happening. And so this was the deadline that had been established for anybody who was encamped there to have to relocate. So we're in the process of cleaning up after that.
And who specifically decided this deadline on the 15th?
That was something that was established through the city. That's how that decision came.
So the city basically said, hey, we want this gone by...
Yeah, I think it was a decision that was made in collaboration with Eastview Christian Church, who owns the parking lot. But it was something that was decided a number of weeks ago that this was the last day for the encampment.
And how many people, last count that you're aware of, were on this line?
Around 35 or so,
35.
We think, yeah.
Okay. And where do you think most of these people are going?
Really, it's a combination of different places. We've been able to get just a couple people into our shelter over the past 6 weeks or so. We have another 10 or 12 who are on our waiting list. We've gotten some on the waiting list for the Bloomington Housing Authority units. A couple of people have actually already gotten into housing. Two individuals yesterday moved in, spent the first night in their apartment last night, and so that was exciting. A small handful of folks have relocated or are in the process of relocating out of the community to try and reunite with family members.
Okay.
But the vast majority of people who were in this encampment are faced with the reality of they're going to have to encamp elsewhere in our community for the time being.
Do you think they're probably going to end up further in the woods?
Well, anything that's not right next door to Home Sweet Home is further away from services. Some will go to wooded areas, I'm sure. Others will go to other places in town where other people are maybe already encamped, or where maybe they've camped in the past. So we're trying to keep track of where all people are going, but we're not sure exactly where everyone will wind up.
And obviously you're one of the unhoused shelters in town, the other one being the Salvation Army. How has the relationship and the collaboration been with Salvation Army? They were supposed to take in, I believe, an additional 32 people, but they released a press release yesterday saying that they were not at this time prepared. So how has the relationship between Home Sweet Home Ministry and Salvation Army and the communication been going?
We've always worked as closely as possible with the Salvation Army. I've been here for 15 years. That's always been the case, that we rely on one another to be complementary in the efforts in serving our unsheltered folks. And so probably over the last several weeks we've ramped up our communication to the extent possible to try and coordinate. Both of our organizations have been reviewing lists that have restricted people from being served to see, can we repeal some of those decisions? Can we revise limitations on being able to be served? So we've been doing work like that over the last several weeks.
And this is based on people that had previously lived here but had been permanently banned. Is that what you're talking about?
Permanently or temporarily, yeah. Yeah. So many of the folks who are unsheltered in our community have already been sought service from the existing system, and for one reason or another that hasn't worked out well. And so some of them wind up on restriction lists. Others just know because of their previous experience that that's not a good place for me to go to get my needs met. And so some are self-imposed, that they don't seek those services.
And did this reevaluation process include people that are otherwise ineligible for housing based on past records, not because they've broken a rule here, but people like with criminal records?
It would include that. Obviously, one of the things that's important within our system is to have identification, and so that's also work we've been doing, is helping people get valid IDs so that they can seek services, maybe if they have been ineligible from that stance in the past.
Okay, and how many people do you currently house at your shelter here?
We have 70 beds all told. Those beds aren't straight up adult beds, right? Many of those are in rooms for families, and so we have 50 adult beds, and then about 20 beds for children in the families that we serve.
And is that completely full? So you have 70 people in the shelter?
We wouldn't have 70 today because the children's beds fluctuate based on number of children in those rooms. Our bed categories are men's beds, women's beds, family rooms, and veterans beds. So we have 4 distinct subgroups that we're serving within our shelter. And I can tell you that all of our single adult beds are full. I'm not sure if our family rooms are all full.
Do you know what the count is today?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I can get that number, but I don't have that number in my head. That number changes daily.
Yeah. And even this is only meant to be temporary. It's basically like...
That's right. It's temporary shelter that we provide.
It's like 12 months. Is that correct?
We don't have an arbitrary time limit.
Okay. If you had to guess, what is your success rate of getting people in shelters into permanent housing?
Modest.
Yeah,
I think particularly right now it's more challenging than in recent memory to help people get into housing. Our rental market is just so tight. Competition for available units is so steep that it's hard to get people into permanent housing who are experiencing homelessness right now. We're pursuing innovative ways to try and address that through our rapid rehousing program, including we're leasing units under Home Sweet Home Ministries name and then subletting to people who may not look good on paper but who we know are really striving to get into housing. So we're doing that with a limited number of units in the community.
Like you're purchasing housing?
We're renting. We're leasing.
We're renting?
Yeah, we are what's called master leasing apartments.
Okay.
Where it's Home Sweet Home Ministries that's subjected to the background and credit checks and
you're basically subletting.
And then we're subletting oftentimes at a reduced rate initially, and then we're essentially subsidizing rent on a graduated basis as people get their feet under themselves. We're transferring more and more of the rent responsibility to them with the expectation that by the end of that initial lease term that's under Home Sweet Home's name, that they've demonstrated that they're a good tenant, that they're able to sustain making those rental payments, and so that the lease can be transferred into their names. And we can start the process over with somebody else.
And how many of those would you say you have right now?
I think we have around 5 or 6 of those units that we're leasing in that way right now.
And would anybody be able to come off the street and try and apply for that, or how does that process work?
Again, that's a very competitive. We have limited capacity in our rapid rehousing program, and so it's really as space opens up. We're looking at the next most vulnerable and situated person to qualify for that program.
Okay, is there anything else that you want the people at home to know about, the services that you offer?
Yeah, we are committed to offering street outreach regardless of where people are in the community. And so obviously while they've been right next door to us, that has made our job a little bit easier trying to engage folks. But we are remaining committed to serving people during their situation of experiencing homelessness, to both provide immediate relief and also to fight for long-term solutions. We're going to continue our efforts to expand and improve our system of providing shelter, even though the issue of unsheltered homelessness is going to be less visible after today. It's not solved at this point in time. We need to remain committed to solving this crisis in our community, and Home Sweet Home Ministries is going to remain faithful in being part of that effort.
And what are some solutions that you would like to see governments and nonprofits that are long-term solutions to reducing unhoused people as this problem has grown exponentially?
Yeah,
in the
obviously
last
a key part of a long-term solution has to be expansion of the availability of affordable housing, the expansion of permanent supportive housing in our community. That's going to be what long-term resolves the rate of homelessness in our community, is the availability of housing and the support for people in that housing. More immediate than that, though, what we are advocating for, and we're really leading the charge in trying to develop, is a new non-congregate shelter type of service that looks like a shelter village of small independent structures. They could be prefabricated, specially designed for that purpose, or they could be something like a refurbished shipping container that's built out to be a dwelling unit, places like that, so that we would have a gated community of a bunch of those structures with on-site supports, on-site services that's fully staffed to provide linkage from people who are currently unsheltered and unengaged in services to be indoors and then connected to services. So we're leading the fight to develop that.
And there's a movement right now to convince the state legislature to lift the ban on rent control and allow local municipalities to make those decisions. Is that something that you or Home Sweet Home Ministries supports, is lifting that ban so that local...
I don't know enough about how housing markets are managed and regulated to really weigh in one way or the other on that. I know that that is something that some communities pursue. As with every approach to try and address homelessness and adequate access to housing, solutions are complex, and so I'm sure that's a complex issue, and I don't really know enough about that to weigh in one way or the other.
And last question, what are some of the services that are available to unhoused people today?
Yeah, we continue to offer our community center that we call the Junction, so that will remain a resource to folks. We have our meal services through our dining room that remain available to folks. We have scheduled shower times for people who are unsheltered, who are waiting for service, so people will be able to continue to access those resources. Our street outreach services will continue, and the tangible resources through that, as far as blankets, hand warmers, essential supplies. We're going to continue to offer those through our street outreach program as well. In addition, try and do what we can within our existing system to get people indoors.
And is the services at the Junction and the showers and the meals, are those available to people that have been permanently banned for whatever reason, or who are ineligible?
Not all of those. There would be a nuanced answer to that. That some people would still be eligible to come in for meals even if they can't stay in the shelter. Certainly people can come into the Junction, but if they've been unsafe here and are on that restricted list, we'd still adhere to those safety limitations. For people that can't even come in for meals in-house, we do provide sack lunches. Mm-hmm. We don't want to turn people away if we don't have to. We look for ways to serve people rather than ways to turn people away when we can.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
All right.